I think never giving up and staying focused and putting in the work is going to get you where you need to be.
Welcome to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast, a weekly podcast providing career and creative inspiration to help you build a purpose-filled life. If you're interested in tapping into your creative potential, pursuing a career with passion, and building on your biggest and best resource, yourself, please join me on this path. I'm your host, Nancy Moore, and I want you to know that I'm on this journey with you. So let's get started. Today, I'm visiting with Tina Parkhill. Tina has been a leader and philanthropist in the Tulsa community for many years. And she actually worked approximately 20 years for various companies in consultative-based sales and management positions before that led her to open Parkhill's Liquors and Wine South. So she became an entrepreneur a little bit later. It wasn't just right out of the gate, but she owns that business, and we talk about her professional journey in this podcast and then what helped her carve a path of entrepreneurship. Also, she gives some great advice on how she stays motivated and what keeps her going to accomplish her goals. I would describe Tina as dedicated, driven, and has a heart for service, and you will hear that through our conversation today. Okay, Tina, this is really fun to have you here with me today. I am excited to introduce you all to Tina Parkhill. And I have known Tina many years. I don't know if we should add up the years or not, but it's been since college at Oklahoma State University. And I was somebody who, I'll just tell you, I really admired Tina. She was in a leadership role when I was in a sorority. We were both in sororities at OSU. And she was Panhellenic president, and I was on Panhellenic and got to represent my sorority while we were at OSU. But that's how we came in contact. And I've seen her over the years and really admired her. She's a true smart businesswoman, entrepreneur, and we get to talk today. So welcome, Tina.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here. I wanted to talk to you just a little about your life and then what you've done and then what you're currently doing. But when you were growing up, because I don't know this, so I'm asking questions that I'm interested in, did you have an idea when you were growing up in Clayton, New Mexico, of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Well, I did have an idea, and clearly it didn't come to be because I'm sitting here today as a business owner, but I was involved in the theater, and I wanted to be an actress. I remember watching Days of Our Lives and the Hope and Bow saga, and yes, I could see myself being a soap opera star, but it did not turn out to be. But I do think that I have a flair for theatrics sometimes, and I'm a very, very outwardly passionate person, and so people know my energetic personality, and so I get to kind of utilize that sometimes in the things that I do. But yes, I did actually want to be an actress.
Okay. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, it did take a different path. So I'm going to mention to you, my husband and I and kids drive through Clayton, New Mexico, typically once a year as we're driving to Taos. And we've seen the dinosaur tracks.
Yes.
And stopped at, I think there's a Subway there. So there's not a lot going on in Clayton, but you left Clayton and moved to Stillwater and attended OSU. So how did that transition? How did you figure out that you wanted to go to OSU? You know, what took you to Stillwater?
Well, actually, it's interesting. My grandfather went to Oklahoma State back when it was Oklahoma A&M in the late 20s and early 30s. And so I was familiar with the school. Ironically, I had a couple of my CHS schoolmates that were there. They were 2 years older, but I had an opportunity to go visit during a senior day and fell in love with the town, fell in love with the campus. I graduated with 48 people. Okay. And so one of the things I wanted to do, I was the first female in my family to get a college education. And I just knew that I always wanted to aspire to gain that college education and then go forward with a professional career. Mm-hmm. And so I was very motivated and driven to get out of Clayton because it was so small. And so Stillwater was a wonderful transition for me because the town itself was very welcoming and everyone on campus was just so kind and gracious.
We both enjoyed our experience at OSU, but I want to find out about what you did after college.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of being able to utilize the career placement services at Oklahoma State, which was awesome. They were very helpful in engaging me in a multitude of interviews, and one of which was with an organization called Ernest and Julio Gallo, which most of us know is a manufacturer of wine and now some spirit products. My first job was with them, and they moved me to Tulsa, which I knew Tulsa just because of being in Stillwater, but I had never really been in the town. So I was able to move here and start as a territory representative for them. After a couple of years of doing that successfully, they promoted me to district manager, where then I was managing territory representatives and just learning a little bit more about the distribution business and just the entire business as a whole. What happened after that was I had a couple of different opportunities throughout, the 5 or 6 years after that, but I worked for consultative sales organizations, selling services, selling products. And so I continued to refine my skills in consultative selling, which was really important because it's really identifying and finding a need for a customer and then being able to fulfill that need. And then I had an opportunity to go to work for a recruiting and staffing company, which was a really exciting experience because I really enjoyed the challenge of identifying a need within an organization and then trying to find the right person to fill that job. So through that job, I was able to meet literally thousands of people in the community and really learn a lot about organizational development, organizational behavior, and just identifying skill sets that match certain positions, specifically starting a subdivision of the company that was accounting and finance, kind of from the ground up, and they already had an established business with a couple of other disciplines, so it really helped get my foot in the door. But I really got to kind of gnash my teeth on being in a very competitively challenging environment because there's a lot of great providers in the community already in place, and then just kind of knock down doors and really have the fulfillment of finding good people jobs and satisfying customers. After that experience, I had another opportunity to start a division of a company for a gentleman by the name of John Fable, whom you just had on your program. Yes. But John is a wonderful entrepreneur. People that know him know about his entrepreneurial success in the community and just him being just a great guy in general. And he and I and another part of the business were instrumental in developing the name, the logo, the business plan of a division of his business that we were able to really become successful in executive think tanks and also supervisory leadership programs. So again, working a lot, not in the staffing side, but on the developmental side, and trying to help people be more effective at their jobs by having a peer group that they could consult with and exchange business ideas, concepts, and challenges. And so it was really through those couple of experiences, in particular, in reference to your question about kind of how I became an entrepreneur, I was very grateful and blessed to have people that had confidence in me to be able to help them start and run divisions of companies. And that gave me the drive to feel like that's something I could do on my own. So when I was associated with the Parkhill family, I was able to see what they were doing in the community and their longstanding history since 1963. And the brand was expanded into South Tulsa, and I actually started that organization about 12 years ago. And so a lot of the things that I learned, I was able to apply and not be afraid of, if you will, some of the challenges that you experience as a business owner. And they honed my skills in understanding that I had the drive and I had the capability and just never to give up and always to look to the future and just stay tenacious to your plan and just try to keep your customers at the focus of your success, and obviously to be grateful and encourage your employees along the way. Yeah. So that's how I am here today. So it's not by myself alone. I mean, and this even goes back to being in college. I had several leadership positions in college, Panhellenic president, was on business student council executive. I had professors, I had advisors, I had chapter advisors in my sorority that were also very encouraging and motivating, and, even had high school teachers that always told me that I could do whatever I put my mind to. And so I just always had a can-do attitude, and I always knew that I wanted to achieve things that were bigger than what I ever thought I could achieve. And so I always just stuck to it. And so, tenacity is one of the things I say is kind of a characteristic, tenacity and passion, and the desire to succeed.
Okay. I love it. So what advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about starting a business?
I think the thing that you have to do is you have to have a plan, right? You need to have a plan. You need to look at what you're wanting to do, evaluate and assess who your client base is, understand your strengths, understand who your competitors are, who your peers are, who your complementary services are. And I think that you just work that plan. You don't ever give up. And, honestly, we all have challenges. And I would love to say that in my own personal business now, the one I've been in for 12 years, that I've made every choice that was the right one. But you don't always do that. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing you have to also understand is you cannot take any setback or any veering off the rails as a deterrent for success. It's going to contribute to your success. Because I feel like if you haven't failed, you don't know what it's like to be successful. And so I think that, and failure is very subjective, right? I mean, I hate to use the word failure. I just think if you have a challenge that takes you a little bit off course, the comfort and the celebration is when you get back on. Mm-hmm. And you take whatever challenge it was and learn from it, and then make your company better because of it. And mm-hmm. so I think never giving up and staying focused and putting in the work is going to get you where you need to be.
Mm-hmm. You're just naturally motivated, though, I think. I am. When I decide I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do it. But just from what I've seen of you, you're very self-accomplished, you're very goal-oriented. How do you reach those goals? Like, do you plan your time? Do you, how do you kind of tick away at getting to where the company is successful, or you are able to reach different goals?
So my theory is that everything has to be actionable. I mean, whether it's in my business or in the philanthropic mm-hmm. efforts that I have, or even with my kids, I think that everything has to be actionable. So number one, I think that you have to write down what your goals are. You have to decide, okay, what am I trying to accomplish in this particular situation? Whether, again, it's business, philanthropy, or personal. I think that you have to look at your calendar. Make sure you have an end date or an end goal in mind. Because I know that we always have like a working list of, hey, I want to lose 5 pounds. So, I mean, that's something that may take some time. But in order to do that, you have to say, okay, well, I need to put in the work. I need to, watch my food intake. I need to be in the gym 5 days a week, or whatever the case may be. Nothing different about that in business. And I think that what you have to also realize is that sometimes you just have to chip away at things. I think that we live in a society where we're kind of instant gratification. Sometimes these goals might take a little longer than you think, but as long as you literally on a weekly basis are working toward those goals, and you can at the end of each week check boxes of things that helped you get there, you will achieve your goals. As far as being driven, in my own personal experience, I mean, I was raised by a single mom. My dad left when I was 5, and my mother worked 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet and did not have a college education. We didn't have health insurance. We didn't have life insurance. We barely had car insurance. And so I always knew, and my mom was a huge motivation to me, just from the standpoint is that she worked hard always, and she always told me to aspire to greater things. And she never let me off the hook with that. She always wanted me to excel. And I put a lot of self-pressure. I was very type A. I'm a perfectionist, which sometimes doesn't bode well for you in these circumstances. And you have to really try to keep that in perspective and keep it in check. Mm-hmm. And I think physical activity is a great outlet. Mm-hmm. Having good friendships is an outlet. Whatever is your outlet to keep you balanced, a work-life balance is so critical. I think if you're heavy one way or the other, it could be potentially difficult to navigate either one if you don't have a good balance. And so anyway, I feel like those are the kinds of the things that keep me going and have kept me motivated.
That's smart. Because that's one of the things that I hear most often from people is about how to reach their goals. They feel like they don't have time. They're working a full-time job, they have a family, but they have this idea for a business, but they just don't have time to make any, strides towards it. And it's surprising when you start writing down those goals and setting your intentions to focusing on reaching those. And when you're talking about look at your calendar, I am a big proponent of that, because if you are logging time that mm-hmm. Even if it's 15 minutes in the morning, then you're going to make some strides towards that goal. And so I am so glad that you talked about all of that.
Well, kind of to dovetail off of that, it's very much what you just said. You do have to put in that time. And I know that we do get covered up with a lot of things, especially as, you maybe get married and have children and you're trying to balance work and you're trying to balance children's activities, you're trying to balance, relationships. And so it's just critical, though, that you have that time. And I do believe that you have to make time for yourself every day, whether it's in meditation or, like I said, reference to exercise or whatever is something that puts you in a good place. You need to have that time, even if it's just watching mindless TV or reading a book. I mean, you definitely need that time just to kind of decompress, because I do feel like the society that we're in continuously moves us, and there's always something to engage and foster our brain, specifically with phones and social media and all that, and I'm guilty as charged in that regard. And I think we've kind of redirected some of our intent and focus on things that in some cases, I mean, I don't want to say they don't matter, but they may not necessarily take precedence over taking time just to be to ourselves. So yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that up too, because just, I guess the term that people are using, or the buzzword right now, is self-care. So just taking that time for yourself to care for yourself. And you're right, mindless TV does, or Netflix or, whatever does fall into that. Just a little time to decompress. What is your favorite thing to do for self-care?
I love to play tennis and I love to exercise. So just physical activity is good for me. I mean, sometimes it's not good for me because it causes injury and pain, but for the most part, mind-wise, that was one of the things I used to do. I used to be a runner and I would run by myself and I would put my headphones on, and that was just a place where I could just let out a lot of energy. One of the things I'm very passionate about, I've been on the board for Family and Children's Services for a number of years and have been supporting that organization and mental health and other organizations that do foster that ability for self-care, specifically for those that are underserved. But what we've determined is that it's not just the underserved that need our services. There's so many issues with mental health and awareness there that has really promoted the opportunity for people to be vulnerable and say, look, I'm struggling. And I have a lot of my friends that have perfectly great roofs over their head. Their kids are doing great. They have, if you would want to look at it as the perfect life, but we all still struggle. And for whatever reason, whatever puts chinks in our armor, whether it is like exclusion or maybe social media or I didn't get invited to this party. I mean, even if I'm 51 years old, but you still kind of have some of those feelings, or I don't think they like me, and sometimes we self-sabotage. And so I think, finding places to channel that kind of negative energy and try to diffuse it as best you can is critical. And when you're a business owner like me, I mean, I have 14 employees, and so every decision I make and everything I do every day affects them. And whether you have 14 or 1400, it doesn't matter. The decisions that you make and the way you run your business, and one false move or one bad financial decision could impact 14 people's lives in a nanosecond, right? So you have that pressure too, and just wanting to ensure that they have a good, safe place to work and that they feel supported. And so there's just a lot of things going on in our environment, and being an entrepreneur is a wonderful experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I love the ability to control my destiny. I love the ability to manage my employees in the way that I want to manage them and motivate them. But it also comes with a little bit of heaviness too, because again, and me as being a perfectionist and a type A, I want to do everything perfect. Well, there's no perfect world that we live in, And so I think that leadership is action, not a position. And I think it doesn't matter where you are in an organization. And I've always kind of operated under that wisdom. I actually had a little plaque that was on my desk that I kept on my desk all the time. So I never did forget that, because, we all want to climb the ladder and become a manager. But the reality is you can be a leader and be in a supporting role. And even as a board member, I mean, I've been chairs of a lot of boards, I've been on executives for a lot of boards, but I've also been a board member, and you can still lead by example without having a specific position. And so as long as people understand that they have relevance, regardless of whether they own the company or whether they're an executive in a company, that's going to motivate them to be the best version of themselves, and whatever that may look like relative to their own perspective. But yeah, it's an interesting world to be an entrepreneur and a business owner. And I have the good fortune of being on the Small Business Connection for the Chamber, and I'm going to be incoming chair for that. And I'm surrounded by dozens of people that are small business owners, and we talk about these kinds of issues and discussions. And really, it's very similar for a lot of us. We all have the same insecurities, if you will, or concerns for our employees. And of course, most of all, we're all driven by customers. So we always want to please and be the best that we can be for our customers in terms of service and savings, in my case, selection of products. And so, but anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. So
I love that you're a good leader. I know you are because you've led me years ago. I know you're a good leader, but I like your perspective about leadership is action and not position. I've never heard that before. I clicked my pen and was writing that out. So
I heard that actually when I think I was still in college, and I never forgot it.
Yeah.
It was, it's been 30 years ago. And so I've kind of kept that close because, like I said, a lot of times we validate ourselves by our position and moving up within an organization. But what we minimize is the fact that we can still be a good, effective leader and be a peer or a subordinate or even just maybe a first line supervisor. You don't have to be the president of the company. And so, obviously I know we're talking today about being an entrepreneur and what that looks like, but not all your listeners are going to be business owners. And so I think sometimes we feel like we fall short if we don't check certain boxes. But the reality is if we're a good teammate with a sales team or a good coworker or a good friend, whatever the case may be, it's just being the best version of yourself that you can possibly be every day. And that's what I try to do when I wake up every morning. And I know there's days that I can look back and go, oops, that wasn't a great day for me. But I just know that there's a new day coming. So you just have to kind of keep that in mind and not allow it to be a cumulative effect.
Great advice. Okay, I really admire the importance you place on philanthropy, and you've been talking about some boards and some different things that you've been involved with. But I'm wondering about why you feel like it's important to give back, why you're taking your time, because, time's so valuable to be on these boards. And
I have to just kind of go back in time a little bit. My mom, even with all the stress that she had in trying to raise 3 kids on her own, she valued giving back to others. And my mom was so busy trying to support us. I mean, she wasn't a real loving mom. I mean, she didn't hug and tell me that she loved me, but she did talk a lot about service to others. And I remember specifically we had an opportunity where in our small town where there really are no rehab centers or formalized healthcare centers there, we had a young man who had a debilitating disease that required him to have physical therapy. And we sponsored him through the church that I was associated with at the time. And all the parishioners and even my mom brought me in, and their children would come in and do physical therapy. Just they had certain exercises that they did on this young man. And so that was such a powerful thing for me, and understanding that, there are things out there that are bigger than I am. And there are people out there that are struggling, and there are people out there that, even though I felt like, I grew up in a small town, none of us really were of significant means, and we didn't have a whole lot, but I didn't know any different. I did know that when I went to college, because, there was a total difference. But I realized what a blessed life I had. I had a roof over my head and food in my tummy and clothes on my back. And no, I didn't have 20 pair of shoes. I may have had one in the winter and one in the spring, but I still had shoes on my feet. And so my mom always kept that into perspective for me. And so when I was in high school, I participated in some teen pageants, and part of the teen pageant was service. And so I affiliated a little bit with that and some through my church. And then going to college, being a part of a sorority, they have a component, in the sorority that facilitates a specific charity that they support. And so we are constantly doing philanthropic activities. And so I really just have an empathetic servant's heart. It's just something innate in me. I don't know how to say that it was created. I mean, I just do. I am a very, very high level empath. My friends will all tell you I would do anything for anybody any given time of the day. That's just who I am, and I don't know how to do any different. So when people ask me to help serve, I'm always very passionate about the things that I serve on, and predominantly it's servicing families and kids, individuals with disabilities, whether they're cognitive or physical, people that suffer from mental health issues that are precipitated by the environment that they've been in and really to no fault of their own. People that have gone off in a bad path that want to get back on track, and you want to give them that second chance, especially when they're young mothers. And so really my desire to do that is just because I want something to be bigger than me. I think we can become so self-absorbed, and when I go and I see other people that have a different struggle than I do, even when I feel like, oh gosh, poor pitiful me in a certain circumstance, I realize that I have so much that I can give, and I'm going to do that to help others, because some people don't have a chance. Just came from a meeting today, and we were talking about just how specifically poverty just takes away chances from people to do the things that they need to do in life. And it's cyclical, and it's sometimes perpetual. And poverty doesn't ever necessarily yield a positive outcome, specifically in healthcare and wellness and nutrition and success, and being given the opportunities that, frankly, we've discussed earlier in this podcast about the opportunities I was given. And so I just always want to know that there's something that I can be doing that's bigger than me. And that's kind of really the gist of it. But I just love it. And I will always participate in philanthropies. And there's great people in this community. Tulsa is one of the most generous communities in the country. And people say that, but it's really true. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are some people here that really care about our Tulsans and care about everybody here, no matter where they are in the community, and no matter what their socioeconomic level is. We want to help everybody. And so I like to support services that facilitate that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I had to get your take on it, because when I read your bio, it is very heavily weighted in all of those really great organizations here in Tulsa, but they need the support of people here in Tulsa to help them continue. Yeah. And so anyway, I really admired that. When I saw that, I thought we've got to hit on that topic.
Well, no, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I am so happy we've gotten to talk today. I have one last question.
Yes.
And so it's my wrap-up question, but I'm wondering what you are passionate about right now.
So that's actually a really good question. I mean, obviously, I've talked about a lot of the things I've been passionate about. I mean, I love owning my business. I love being a philanthropist, and I love supporting my friends and helping them in any way that I can. But, my children have now gone on to college. They're at OSU. Go Pokes. Mm-hmm. Go Pokes. Both of them are there. My daughter's a sophomore. My son is a senior. And so I have had an opportunity to be an empty nester now. And, I have a lot of commitment still in terms of leadership and philanthropy, but I'm really trying to kind of take a little time just to kind of reflect and spend a little bit more time focusing on myself, because I've been kind of in a rat race for so long, just staying busy with kids and balancing that with work and then personal. And so I'm really wanting to take a little time to travel a little bit more and just really truly engage in a lot of my friendships that I haven't been able to do so because I just didn't have time. So yeah, I'm just going to try to, maybe as the cliche says, just kind of stop and smell the roses a little bit more, because I've been so busy. But yeah, I will never not be philanthropic. I will never not be engaged in the community or my business, but I just definitely want to have a good work-life balance. Mm-hmm. and really just spend a lot of time with my friends and watch my children flourish and grow and become adults and do great things in their lives too. So I'm sure once they grow older and maybe get married and have kids, I'll have another little passion project. But for now, I'm just trying to kind of get a little better balance with my schedule personally and what I'm doing in the community and business-wise.
Okay. I love it. That there's a season for everything. And so my daughter is in college. I still have my son at home. He's a senior. And so I feel like in the next year, I'm going to be in your same position. And so I always like to find out, what people are doing.
Well, maybe I'll come back and ask you that question.
Yes. Yes. I would love it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for talking to me today. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you asking me. It was a pleasure.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap on this week's episode. I want to thank you for listening to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast. It means the world to me, and I'd love to connect with you. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Sharing Passion and Purpose, and Twitter at Passion Sharing. Also, if you like this podcast, it would mean a lot to me for you to subscribe, rate, and review it. And as always, all my show notes will be available on my website, sharingpassionandpurpose.com.